Join us by the fireside for our evening tales of true life's strange experiences with things that lie beyond the veil of the known and into the misty depths of the mysterious and unknown.
Hi, welcome back. Today's story is about a castle in Scotland that's very, very famous. It's called Glamis Castle. A lot of people have heard of it, and it's a classic place for paranormal happenings over the centuries. It's just one of those places where a lot of things have happened. And I've always been quite interested in the place. So I thought I would just read some of the alleged hauntings that have been recorded for a long time now, probably since the 1800s perhaps. So let's get to it. So, anyway, Glamis Castle stands in the rolling countryside of Angus, Scotland. Its towers rise from the mist like something half remembered from a dream. To the casual visitor, it's a fairy tale fortress. It's symmetrical, golden stoned, almost welcoming. But Glamis has long carried a reputation that sharply contradicts its beauty. It's widely regarded as the most haunted castle in Scotland. And that's saying something because Scotland has a lot of haunted places. And this is a title earned not through modern ghost hunting theatrics, but through centuries of whispered accounts, documented sightings, and grim historical events. The land on which Glamis Castle stands has been occupied since at least the 11th century. One of the earliest recorded events tied to its dark reputation involves King Malcolm II, who, according to tradition, was murdered here in the year 1034. While historians debate the exact location of his death, local legend insists that blood was spilled on this ground long before Glamis became the grand structure we see today. The current castle was largely constructed in the 14th and 15th centuries, a violent era in Scottish history. Clan rivalries, political intrigue, and ruthless justice were part of everyday life. Glamis was no exception. The castle became a stronghold of the Lyon family, later the Bowes-Lyons, whose lineage includes Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, making Glamis not only infamous but royal. What separates Glamis from other ancient castles is not just the number of deaths associated with it, but the secrecy. The castle is famous for hidden rooms, sealed chambers, and architectural anomalies, windows that appear on the exterior with no corresponding rooms inside. These physical mysteries have fueled speculation for centuries, giving rise to legends of prisoners bricked into walls, cursed family members hidden from the world, and sins too terrible to be spoken aloud. Glamis is also deeply entwined with Shakespearean lore. In Macbeth, the castle is depicted as the home of the Thane of Glamis, a place where betrayal and murder unfold. While Shakespeare took creative liberties, the association cemented Glamis as a symbol of ambition, violence, and moral decay. By the time the Enlightenment reached Scotland, Glamis already had a reputation that locals spoke of only in hushed tones. Servants refused to work alone in certain wings. Guests reported footsteps, voices, and the sensation of being watched. These were not tales invented for tourists. Many were recorded in letters, journals, and official guest logs. So, with this history of murder, secrecy, nobility, and silence, Glamis Castle became the perfect breeding ground for legend. And as centuries passed, legend gave way to something more unsettling, persistent, allegedly true encounters that refused to fade into myth. One of the earliest and most enduring apparitions at Glamis Castle is known simply as the White Lady. She is most often seen in the castle's private chapel, seated quietly in one of the pews. Witnesses describe her as pale, luminous, and completely still, as though deep in prayer. She does not turn her head, she does not speak, and when approached, she vanishes. The White Lady is believed to be the ghost of Janet Douglas, Lady Glamis, a noblewoman accused of witchcraft in the 16th century. Her crime, allegedly, was plotting to poison King James V, an accusation widely believed to have been fabricated for political reasons. Despite her noble status, Jane was convicted and burned at the stake in 1537. Historical records confirm her execution. What they do not explain is why her presence would remain bound to Glamis Castle centuries later. Multiple visitors, including clergy, have independently reported seeing the White Lady in the same location. One particularly detailed account comes from a Victorian-era minister who entered the chapel late one evening to prepare for prayer. Believing the chapel occupied, he apologized softly, only to realize the woman did not respond. As he stepped closer, she faded, leaving the air noticeably colder. Staff members still leave one pew, permanently unoccupied, out of respect. Skeptics argue that candlelight, reflection, or suggestion could explain the sightings, but the consistency, the same figure, same posture, same location, has made the White Lady one of Scotland's most credible and persistent hauntings. Among all the legends attached to Glamis Castle, none is spoken of with more discomfort, even today, than the story of the monster of Glamis. And that's actually my favourite too. Unlike many ghost stories that grew through retelling, this legend is unsettling precisely because it has never been encouraged. The Lyon family, and later the Bowes-Lyons, have consistently denied it. Guides tread carefully around it. Former staff often refuse to discuss it at all. And yet the story persists, not as a tale of something that died, but of something that lived. According to long-standing tradition, a child born into the family in the early 19th century was so severely deformed that he was hidden from the world. Some versions say the deformity was physical, others say it was something far stranger, a shape that did not resemble any known human condition. Now, a darker variation claims that the child continued to live far longer than expected, sustained in secrecy and growing to adulthood and beyond, confined within the castle walls. What lends disturbing credibility to the legend is Glamis Castle itself. Visitors and architects alike have noted structural anomalies. Windows visible from the exterior that correspond to no room inside. Corridors that end abruptly and sealed chambers whose dimensions defy the castle's internal layout. During renovations in the 19th century, servants allegedly discovered a hidden room containing signs of long-term habitation, a bed, a fireplace, worn furniture, and objects suggestive of a child's presence. The room was reportedly resealed under direct instruction from the family, and those involved were sworn to silence. Now, one servant, whose account survives only through second-hand testimony, claimed to have seen the door to a concealed room partially open. From within, he glimpsed what he described as a mass too large to be contained properly by the space. Pressed close to the darkness beyond the threshold, he was dismissed from service the following morning, by the way. But servants were not the only ones to experience something strange like this. There are allegedly true accounts from overnight guests, many of whom had no prior knowledge of the monster legend even. In the late 19th century, a visiting aristocrat was housed in a guest bedroom adjacent to what he was told was an unused wing of the castle. In a private letter, later discovered among his belongings, he described being awakened shortly after midnight by a slow rhythmic thudding, like the sound of an immense body shifting its weight against stone. At first, he assumed it was the castle settling, a common enough occurrence in old buildings, but the sound continued, irregular now, accompanied by deep, laboured breathing, faint but unmistakable, resonating through the wall beside his bed. He rang for a servant. No one came. The breathing stopped just before dawn. The guest departed Glamis that morning, abandoning the remainder of his stay without explanation. Another account from the early 20th century involves a married couple invited to stay at the castle for several nights. Both later described being awakened at precisely the same moment by a sensation they struggled to articulate, a feeling of pressure, as though the air in the room had thickened. The husband said he felt certain something massive was standing just beyond the wall, near the head of the bed, not moving, simply present. Then came the sound, scratching, slow, deliberate, and methodical, not frantic, not animalistic. The wife later said it was the most unsettling part, describing it as patient, as though it had all the time in the world. They did not leave their room until morning. When they mentioned the incident at breakfast, staff reportedly fell silent. A senior servant advised them, gently but firmly, not to speak of what they had heard while inside the castle. Modern accounts are no less disturbing. During the late 20th century, a guest attending a private function was granted access to a normally restricted section of Glamis. Late at night, while walking alone, he noticed a door at the end of a corridor standing slightly ajar, despite being told the entire wing was sealed and unused. From within came a low sound. It was not a growl, not a voice. The guest later described it as something attempting to form words, unsuccessfully, a sound shaped by effort rather than intent. As he approached, the corridor lights dimmed noticeably, and the door began to close on its own. Just before it shut completely, he glimpsed movement inside, something shifting within the darkness, something that appeared too large for the room it occupied. He left the castle before dawn and declined all requests for interviews. There are other reports that are quieter but no less troubling. Guests describe vivid nightmares of confinement and suffocation, dreams of being hidden, sealed away, forgotten. Several have reported waking with the certainty that they were not alone, despite locked doors and empty corridors. Some claim to have found handprints on walls, placed far higher than any person could reach. Others describe mirrors fogging from the inside as if something unseen had been breathing close to the glass. What troubles researchers most is the consistency. Guests who had never heard the legend often describe the same sensations: pressure, breathing, weight, and an overwhelming emotional presence. Not anger, not violence, but immense sorrow. This has led some investigators to speculate that whatever lies behind the monster of Glamis legend may not be a haunting in the traditional sense. It may instead be an imprint, a residue left behind by prolonged suffering, secrecy, and isolation. Or, as others suggest more uneasily, it may be something still aware, bound to the castle, not by death, but by silence. Whether the monster of Glamis was once human, something else entirely, or now exists only as an echo etched into stone, those who experience it tend to agree on one thing: there is a presence behind those walls. Another frequently reported apparition is the grey man seen wandering corridors late at night. Unlike the White Lady, the grey man is active. Witnesses report hearing footsteps before seeing him, slow and deliberate, echoing through empty hallways. He appears as a tall figure dressed in muted grey, his face indistinct, his presence accompanied by a crushing sense of dread. Several guests have fled the castle after encountering him. One 20th century account describes a guest staying in a bedroom, long rumoured to be haunted. He awoke to the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth outside his door. Assuming it was another guest, he opened it, only to see the corridor empty. As he closed the door, the footsteps continued, this time inside the room, circling the bed. The grey man is believed to be the ghost of a servant or prisoner, though no definitive identity exists. What remains consistent is the psychological impact of the encounter. Witnesses often report lingering anxiety, nightmares, and an overwhelming sense of being watched for days afterwards. One of the most infamous Glamis legends involves the Earl Beardy, a nobleman said to have gambled on the Sabbath. According to the tale, on a stormy Sunday night, he declared he would play cards even with the devil himself. Soon after, a mysterious stranger appeared, and the two began a card game so intense that servants could hear shouting, laughter, and furious accusations echoing through the night. When they attempted to intervene, they were driven back by an unseen force. The game, it is said, never ended. Witnesses claim that on certain nights, the sound of cards shuffling and dice rolling can still be heard from a sealed room. Some have reported flashes of red light underneath the door and the smell of sulphur in the air. Whether metaphor or manifestation, the card player remains one of Glamis Castle's most unsettling nocturnal legends. Even in the modern era, Glamis Castle continues to defy explanation. Security cameras have malfunctioned in specific corridors. Motion sensors trigger without cause. Staff members report doors locking themselves, bells ringing without ropes being pulled, and voices calling their names when no one is present. One guide resigned after repeatedly hearing a child crying in an unused wing, a sound confirmed by visitors who had no prior knowledge of the castle's legends. Despite attempts to modernize and rationalize, Glamis refuses to be fully tamed. Glamis Castle stands today as a place of beauty, history, and unease, where stone remembers what people try to forget. Whether the stories are echoes of trauma, tricks of the mind, or something far older and darker, one truth remains: Glamis Castle does not let its past rest quietly. And for those who walk its corridors after nightfall, listening to the walls breathe and the floors whisper, the question is no longer, is it haunted? But rather, who is still there? And I'd just like to mention that there are far more stories, relating to hauntings in Glamis Castle than I've covered here. These are just some of the more famous accounts, but there's a lot more that has been recorded, and the place is open to the public, by the way, so I don't know what their hours are, but I'm sure it has a website where you can get tickets and find out all the times and so on. I was just wondering if you can stay at Glamis Castle, but it's not actually a hotel as far as I'm aware, but it does have a place where you can stay close by, and it's the Glamis House. And of course, there are other places where you can stay in the area. I've never been there. I'd really like to. So it's just a fascinating place, and it really has so many secrets. It really does. And one can only feel a sense of sorrow or compassion for whatever, this monster is, just trapped there for such a long time. And the sadness that still seems to be embedded in the walls. It just sounds like a very sad, very tragic thing. And you kind of wonder if he's moved on. So are people still having experiences there? I mean, within the past few years, for example, do people still sense this giant presence, sad presence? I don't know. But it certainly would be interesting to stay there, and that's something that we plan to do one day. So if anyone listening to this story today has had any experiences or knows anything about, any true paranormal experiences that anyone else has had within Glamis Castle or the area, feel free to share it in the comments. And you can like and subscribe if you like the stories to help the channel grow. Thank you. Till next time. Bye.